Good morning and welcome to Business Half Hour here on Classic FM 97.3, station that plays every song you know. I am Ifai Atama. And don't forget, Business Half Hour is brought to you by Classic FM 97.3 in conjunction with Nairametrics Nigeria. We have Uwade on the other side. Uwade, good morning.
Morning, Ifai. Hi, how are you? Good morning, Lagos. Welcome once again to Business Half Hour. It's a pleasure being here again. Compliments of the season to everyone and wishing everyone a happy and healthy 2021 in a few days.
Okay.
Today
Go ahead, Uwa.
Okay, so today we have a guest who will be talking to us from the communications and media perspective and how you can run that small business and turn it into the next global media and communication business in Nigeria and across the world. So I'll hand back over to Ifeanyi to introduce our guest, and then we'll go on from there.
All right. Her name is Tolulope Olorundero. She's a strategic public relations and communications consultant, as well as board advisor, and having exceptional skills in crisis management and digital communications, with an intuitive stance for commercial viability. She is the founder and principal consultant at Mosron Communications, and also the chairperson of the Association of Nigerian Women in Public Relations. Good morning and welcome to Business Half Hour, Tolulope.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone.
All right, so let's start from the very start. Tell us, what exactly does Mosron Communication do?
Okay, well, Mosron Communications is a public relations consulting firm. We provide public relations and communications services to business organizations and service brands across sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay, how long has it been in existence?
So I started the company full-time January 2019, but I've had it as a side hustle since 2006 when I was in school.
Yeah, okay.
Wow, that's interesting. So what inspired the business and what inspired you into going into communications and media management or media consulting, as the case may be?
Okay, so I always liked to read books. I've always loved to read, and so I started off really as an editor while I was in school. And so, I mean, when I was probably in GS1, GS2, my father was a journalist. And the way it started was he would come home with newspapers, and then of course you would have to read, you'd have to listen to NTA news at that time. And then I sort of fell out of love with Nigerian newspapers because for some reason, the first thing I would see when I picked up a newspaper were the errors. And because I also loved to read novels, I was able to put it side by side, and it just kept it just wasn't working well for me that all I could see there were errors. And so perhaps that sort of conditioned me to know what to look out for when there's something that is not written well in a book. Bottom line, that's what inspired my interest to become an editor. And that's what I started to do. So by the time I got into university, I was editing materials for my coursemate. I studied English. I was editing materials for my coursemate. I was the head of publicity for my local church in school. And so, of course, apparently I decided to do things around public relations, and I didn't know that was what it was. So Mosron Communications started out as an editorial firm, providing editorial services to students and to churches, really. That's how we started. And then, of course, by the time I finished university, I started writing professional exams in NIPR. By the time I finished service, I had all my NIPR certifications complete. And then, of course, I was very clear that I wanted to do PR. And so the company sort of morphed from a full-fledged editorial company to public relations. And I mean, both services are interwoven. There is no way, absolutely no way you would say that you're a public relations person and you're not able to write or edit. So it's all rolled into one.
Interesting. Funding for your company, how did that come about?
Okay, so thankfully, we provide a service business, and it's really about what you have in your head. I mean, so I didn't have to go get an office. Basically, there was no funding. There was not so much need for funding. It was completely bootstrapped. We get jobs, we do it. At the time when I was doing it as a side also, of course, I had my full-time work that I was doing. So the money comes, we do the job, money comes, we save it aside and all of that. Eventually, when I started out full-time, I just converted the room in my house to my office.
Yeah, and it basically works for you.
Oh, yes, of course. And thankfully, so from the time I started the business full-time anyway, it's always been remote. So we're able to provide remote services for clients. So in 2019, before COVID even got mainstream in quotes, we were already fully integrated. Providing remote services. So this year sort of just flowed into what we do normally.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So now that it's a full-fledged company, how do you see the company expanding, raising more funds, and what kind of things do you think would help you generate that kind of revenue stream that would ensure that you can grow and grow, since you say most of your work is remote?
So for us, it's really about providing more cutting-edge services, not necessarily raising funds. Again, our organization provides services. If we're thinking of getting more funds, I think that would speak more to technology that we need to get in the company to enable us provide more services to organizations. So what we've been trying to do, we have a strategy meeting in my office today, for example, a strategy retreat. And what we're trying to do is, okay, so based on our experience in 2020, these are the areas that we think that organizations and service-based business will need in 2021, and see how we can consolidate in our areas of strength to be able to provide that service to a wider range of people outside Nigeria this time, to other sub-Saharan African countries.
Do you think that we are awake to public relations, especially in this part of the world? Everybody just thinks, I can do it myself, Joe. Is it not just to put out one or two statements?
Well, so before this year, right, I've been a very strong advocate of public education on the importance of public relations. I mean, I talk about it a lot on my Twitter handle and on LinkedIn. And then COVID happened.
Yes.
So apparently, not even apparently, realistically, what many people know about public relations is crisis. When there's a crisis, you know that you need to go and look for a PR person. The entirety of 2020 was a crisis. So you can imagine what happened. You can imagine how that sort of just fed into what we've always been saying. But away from just keeping organizations focused on getting public relations professionals to help them manage crisis situations, is how you now had a situation during COVID where organizations needed to reach out to their staff who were now having to work remotely. We had internal crisis issues. We had organizations that now needed to interact more with the government to ensure that regulations don't get them locked down because of the restrictions around. So I think more organizations began to see the importance of public relations, and it became very obvious that they didn't even have public relations functions within their organizations. And of course, the people who would typically double as PR people, things began to fall flat. For many organizations, they either had lawyers who were their PR people, they had business development people doubling as PR people. I mean, by the time the reality of COVID began to happen and we started interacting with these brands, the lawyers, the comment would be that, oh, thank God I don't have to do all these things again. Oh, yeah, you people come. The PR, the business development person now had additional strain because business still had to continue. They needed to focus on their own primary objective. And now, because of people like Mosron Communications, they now were able to focus on their primary assignment of trying to keep business afloat than trying to manage stakeholders.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting what you said about PR and people, like if I said, everybody thinks he can manage his own public relations rather than get someone who understands what it really is all about. So considering that, what would you say are the key things that you need to put together towards ensuring that you have the right public communications, you have the right media communications contacts and communications generally from from a business perspective, especially in terms of helping you to manage the inherent risk of businesses, not just at times of crisis?
Okay, so the first thing is public relations is not just media relations. I mean, for my firm, it's not part of the first 4 things that we offer when we're talking about our value proposition and our uniqueness as a public relations consulting firm, right? And I think that's where the misconception lies, because for many organizations, they're not necessarily cutting the media. So when they hear public relations, they think media. And if already they're settled in their minds that I don't really, as an organization, want to interact with the media, they sort of wave public relations aside. So that misconception first needs to be addressed to let the business public know, and even the general public know, that there is more to public relations than media relations, right? There's corporate communications in terms of how an organization is going to interact with the general public as an organization in itself. And this talks about the type of language they use, what you're going to be putting on your website. If you have social media pages, what type of personality will your organization take? Are you going to be the fun and funky type of organization? Or are you going to be the prime and proper organization? Are you going to use certain words that are not really trendy? Right? Those are details that your public relations unit should be able to advise you on. The other part is public relations is really a management function. It's not that some people will sit down in an office somewhere and then in that place decide that, oh, this is what we want public relations to do. Just go and give it to public relations, or they say publicist or something like that, and then the person just does it. No, public relations must sit at management meetings to be able to guide management on the importance and the implications of management decisions on their various stakeholders. I mean, the media is just one of the various stakeholders that an organization has. There are the employees, which very many organizations overlooked, and some of them, to their detriment, overlooked it during COVID, and we saw what happened to them. I mean, there are many case studies there, and immediately they began to see that you could not just continue to overlook their employees. They now had to rely a lot on HR, who to an extent are able to manage that interaction between the organization and the employees, but not sufficiently. I mean, because HR is also part of employees, and somebody must also look out for employees as well. So there are employees as a stakeholder of the organization, there are customers, there are regulatory bodies, right? As stakeholders of the organizations. Even management itself is a stakeholder to the organization, because I mean, again, very many people think that, oh, this person is just going to sit down there and be coming up with ideas. Nobody actually thinks, oh, so how is management coping? Let us as employees reach out to management. Let's say, okay, so 2-3 staff, call the MD today and just say, Oga, well done. Thank you so much for seeing us through this period, right? And it's not just something that, it's not just about welfare, that they'll say, oh, HR should go and take care of it. It's a strategic management decision to make sure that top-down 360-degree across the organization, all internal stakeholders are first identified and appreciated and carried along. I mean, we worked with group companies this year where one subsidiary has absolutely no idea what is happening in another subsidiary, and all of them had to now work remotely. There are instances this year where we had to guide group CEOs to provide, to talk to their employees, because I mean, before everything was just send an email, just click all staff. But that couldn't happen this year again because of peculiarities around COVID.
Okay, so quickly, before we go on a break, because we have to take a short break now, you said there were 4 critical things in terms of value proposition from a communication PR perspective. Could you quickly just let our audience know what these key things are?
Sure. There's corporate communications, there's stakeholder management, there's corporate events management, and there's reputation management. Again, that's the other part that is very popular. There's reputation management.
Corporate communication, stakeholder management, reputation management. Which one is the fourth one?
Event management.
Event management. We're still on Business Hour with Tolulope Olorundero. If I will need to take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll continue with our discourse.
All right. Business Half Hour on Classic FM 97.3, station that plays every song you know, brought to you in collaboration with Nairametrics Nigeria. I am Ifeanyi Atama, who are there is on the other side of the radio. Plus, we also have Tolu with us, a strategic public relations and communications consultant, as well as a board advisor. Plus, having exceptional skills, as you've been hearing her speak for the last 20 minutes or so in crisis management and digital communication. And she's with Mosron Communications. She's the founder and principal consultant at that. Welcome back.
Thank you, Ifeanyi. Good to be back on air. Tolu, we're talking of, and just before we went on the break, you talked about 4 critical things from a value proposition perspective of PR. First and foremost, we all know that businesses, without people, you really don't have a business, irrespective of how much technology you have. But can you enlighten us how these 4 critical things, you know, would sit with people as it relates to the business, and how do they, I'm trying to find the right word, how do they play their part in ensuring that PR as a whole, whether it's an individual or an organization, the message that is being sent out is the right message, and it's one message that is being sent out by everybody at any particular point in time?
Okay, so first of all, it's important that organizations must have communication policies, right? I mean, for some organizations that we've provided consulting services to, the very first thing we do is to check all your internal communication protocols to make sure that, for example, sending out one staff in an organization, sending out an email filled with errors doesn't work for the brand. It affects the perception of the brand of that organization. So there must be checks and balances internally to make sure that errors from staff going to third parties outside the organization are limited, to ensure that the perception of that company is not adversely affected when such things go out. Okay, and there are ways to work around that. The other thing is organizations themselves must understand that public relations has direct input into into the results that organizations get, either top line or bottom line. We've had extensive conversations about that. One of the reasons that executives think that, oh, PR is just a jamboree, let's just go and do a party, let's just go to the media, is because there's no way for them to see that there's a tie between what they're doing in terms of PR and how it gets them either money or results in the organization. And that's where measurement comes in. For staff within organizations, they must also understand that they are ambassadors of the company, and it is a PR function to make staff members see that everything that you do as a representative of the organization outside that organization will impact that organization. I mean, there's something called employer branding these days, right? Where people talk about your company so well. People see the things that your organization do so well. They almost desperately want to be a staff member in your organization. And that's why for some companies, recruitment is not necessarily difficult, because their employer branding is so fantastic that people are eagerly waiting for you to say, we want to employ somebody, and you get the best of the best. For SME entrepreneurs and business owners, one of the things I tell them is you need to make sure that your personal brand is so on point that you are able to attract people who want to work with you, not necessarily the organization, because it's you as an individual that people would need to interact with. And that goes to your customers, that goes to your vendors, that goes to prospective employees as well. And so there are many facets to this, where from the employees even to management, I mean, there's something called executive branding, right? There are some things that chief executives cannot say, or some places they should not go, so that the brand of the organization is not adversely affected and doesn't eventually affect the work that either sales or business development people are doing as well.
Okay, you've been mentioning corporates, brands, and all of the SMEs. What about individuals now?
Exactly.
Okay. So for individuals, first of all, well, that would just be that you have a best personal brand to protect. And I mean, you have chief executives now actively working on personal brands.
Yes.
I advocate it seriously also for SME entrepreneurs as well, especially if you're a service-based business owner, right? Because I mean, all you're selling is the knowledge you have in your head. Yeah. So if nobody really knows, or they've not seen you interact with the public on whatever social media platforms there are, there's no way for you to convince people, or for people to interact with you to know that, okay, this person seems brilliant, let me test out the work that they do. And that's why there's social media. I mean, one of the things I say is social media has democratized access, and it has democratized the ways that we do things. Now you don't need to come on radio stations for the world to know that you exist, or that they know what you're doing. How effectively are you using social media? But for a business owner, there's a nuance to that, right? So if you're going on social media as a business owner, what are you going to be saying there? What impact do you want your social media usage to have on your business? It must be a very strategically thought out process, right? To use social media platforms to further the aim of either your personal brand or your organizations. And how do you start that? First of all, what are your personal values? What do you want people to remember you for when you are not there? Is it about your business? Is it that you are the one that is always dragging people and things like that? And then there's also LinkedIn as a platform, which is something that is critical for everybody, particularly if you are a career professional or a business owner. Of course, you must have presence there so that when people want to find you, they are able to find you and then see enough information about you on those platforms for them to take a decision about you. I mean, there's a study that says that people will not, about 70% of people said they would search for a business first online, and the entrepreneur, the business owner, before they take a buying decision. So imagine that 70% of your customers or your clients are looking for you online, and there's nowhere to find you. You've lost 70% of people without even knowing that you've lost them.
Wow. This is a real lesson in rebranding ourselves.
No,
Tolu, we're running short of time, and
I see that.
And time is never a friend when we're really enjoying ourselves on Business Alpha. So 2 quick things before we go. How do we reach Tolu quickly, and on what kind of, or what platforms can we reach Tolu? Can you share with our audience?
Sure. I'm on so I'm on I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. Those are my business platforms. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn at Tolucoms. That's at TOLUCOMMS, at Tolucoms on all social media platforms, basically. There's LinkedIn, there's Twitter, there's Facebook, and Instagram. I'm at Tolucoms everywhere. You can read some of my articles on Medium, also at Tolucoms1. On Medium, I talk extensively about public relations. I mean, I think the last 2 articles I wrote focused on 3 ways public relations directly impact business outcomes. I think that that's an article that many businesses would like to read.
How about your business? How can we reach out to them?
Sure. Our website is www.mosroncommunications.com. www.mosron. Mosron is MOSRON. Communications with an S.com. Our email info@mosroncommunications.com. Social media pages as well at Mosron Coms, everywhere online.
All right. So
at Mosron. Okay.
At Mosron Coms. That comes is COMMS for communication.
Yes.
All right, so what's your guiding light, your guiding principle? Like, what quotes guide you when you wake up in the morning?
For a very long time, this has been with me. Communication is life. everything really. And so as you live, you interact with your kids at home, your spouse at home, with your friends, with your family. Communication is life. And so there is an urgent need for all of us to learn how to do it effectively and well. And the more opportunities we have to learn that, the more opportunities I have to teach people how to communicate effectively, the better the quality of life that we will live.
Yes, talking about teaching people, that's quite interesting. You mentioned something about some training next year.
Yes. Well, so of course, as we talked about when we went off air for a bit, not very many people know about how important public relations and communications is to their business and to their careers as individuals. So in 2021, my company has a series of training that we have planned, 3 streams of communications trainings. Mosron Communications, capacity development training on communications for entrepreneurs, training for professionals, and training for public office holders. I mean, everybody knows that Nigeria desperately needs to learn how to communicate better. So we've decided to have a training stream for that area as well.
All right, and I'm sure details about the training will be on your
website.
Yes, it will be on our website and social media pages.
All right, great stuff, great stuff.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Like we always say, time is never our friend on Business Sapphire, especially when we're having fun. It's been Business Sapphire, brought to you by Nairametrics in partnership with Classic FM. It's every Monday at 8 a.m. We have to sign out now. It's been great having you talk along with me to Tolu. Tolu, it's been a great pleasure talking to you and learning a few things, especially the 4 value propositions of communication, the top 4 values. Thank you once again for listening to us, Lagos, and I hand you back over to Ifeanyi in the studio.
All right, thank you very much, Tolu. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much too.
Yes, thank you to the listener. It is still Classic FM 97.3 station that plays every song, TCM.